Hello and welcome to the Learning PHP video tutorial series. I'm going to be your host for this. Matt Gordinick is my name. I own a web company. My product is FormBoss. FormBoss is essentially software that allows us to create web forms, applications. And one of its key features is that we can add custom code whenever we want. And so essentially at my core is the belief that tools that do things for us are good, but having the direct knowledge of how some of these tools work from a lower level is just as important, if not more important. And so hopefully in this video series here, by covering a hopefully huge swath of what PHP is and what it does and how we can work with PHP to create web pages, work with JavaScript, etc., you'll have a better time in your own web development. And if you're just a hobbyist creating better web pages, maybe working with your WordPress site, or if you're a FormBoss user, hopefully having a slightly easier time getting in there and adding that custom code. So let's just jump right in. So the first step in working with PHP is to create a working environment on our local computer. And so there are two different ways of doing that. The first way is the individual download method. So we go to php.net and we download PHP. We go to Apache and download the Apache web server. And even though mysql.com is down, ironically, as we'll see in option number 2, go to mysql.com and download the MySQL web server. The problem with that is it's a little bit heavy-handed in that for power users, setting up your own environment is fine, but it's a bit of a chore, especially if you've never done it before. The much better way is to download Zend Server CE. Zend Server CE essentially takes these three guys, PHP, Apache, and MySQL, and it bundles it up in one pre-configured package for us. These are often referred to as stacks. So LAMP is a stack, MAMP is a stack. If you already have a stack installed, great, keep using it. There's no reason to switch really to Zend Server CE, but if you want to follow along as we go through, I would honestly suggest giving this a shot. It's got a great management tool, which looks like this. Essentially, when we install Zend Server CE, it's going to bring up this web interface running locally, and when we log in, it gives us a really simple way of managing our PHP installation. And so we're not going to really get into this, though you're going to see as we go through these videos, we're probably going to be looking at the logs. So it's a really nice, easy way to get in there and say, well, I had an error with the code that I wrote. Maybe this log file will give me some hints as to what it is. And so that's where they can be found here. And then any server info we want. And perhaps more importantly, it's got a way that we can look at our server setup. So changing things like our directives for setting the date values. This is something that you will run into. When you install PHP by default, it won't have a time zone set up. And PHP 5.3 and higher wants that information, and so you might get errors when we're working with dates saying, hey, I want that set. So it's really easy to go in here and just type that in. And then as well as extensions. Extensions, Zend Server CE does a great job of giving us a really solid set of default extensions for connecting to databases, working with XML, etc. But there are times, perhaps, when you want to create a product that maybe other users are going to want to get into. And being able to disable extensions really easy like this is good, because maybe who you've written your software for, maybe you're not sure of their extension setup. And so you can test very easily using these essentially just turn on and turn off commands here to see what other environments will look like. So pretty simple. Go to Zend Server, the page for it, download it. I think you have to have a Zend login. Kind of a bummer, but pretty easy to sign up for one pretty quick. And then you'll have a server essentially set up. There is one other thing that we want to do, and ironically this is going to be the bulk of the complex stuff in this video, and that's to set up a virtual host. And virtual hosts are not necessary per se, but for doing what we do, I think they're incredibly useful. And especially if you're going to turn into a hobbyist that is going to be working on several different projects, having the ability to have virtual hosts, it makes your life much easier. So what is a virtual host? Well, essentially what it means is when I'm working on my websites, I just want to type in something simple like YT, and I want this to go to the website that I'm working on. But when I do that, notice that I type in YT here, and Chrome can't find anything, and that's because there is no website called YT. Strangely enough, seems like a good domain name. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell a local machine, Windows or Mac or Linux, whatever you're on, that, hey, when I type in YT in my web browser window, I want you to actually serve that to me. I want you, with my now local Apache installation, PHP installation, to actually say that this belongs to me, this YT. So to do that, we do a little bit of configuration. So notice my path here. On Windows, I'm on 64-bit, so it's program files x86. If you're on 32-bit, usually it's just program files. In Mac, it's going to be very similar. It'll be in your applications folder. There'll be Zend, Apache 2, configure, extra. And within this extra folder then, I have a file called vhosts, which I'm going to open up here. And then I also have these two guys. This is not going to be default when you install Zend Server, but I've essentially put these two guys right here. The first is a shortcut. As you can see from the tooltip there, it goes to C Windows System32 drivers. On Mac, it is etc. That is just / etc. And then the file that we want is called hosts. And so it's a two-step process to essentially being able to say, I want YT to go to my local server. Step one is we go into this Windows System32 drivers, etc. And again, if we're on Windows, I want you to take this host file, copy it out to your desktop, and then back in our Apache 2 folder, I want you to overwrite, or I should say, in this case, you'd write it there for the first time, the file right here. So in other words, I want the host file sitting right there. The reason why we do that is because in Windows, in Mac as well, etc. is going to be a protected folder. And so our operating systems are going to throw a bunch of warnings, right, that make it difficult to change that file. By moving it here and then adjusting its permissions so that in my case, my Windows user has full permissions to this file, or on Mac doing essentially the same thing, we can change this file with impunity here. And it's not going to throw up those annoying roadblocks, and then we can overwrite this copy and etc. here. And so in this case, I actually created a shortcut as well, right? So I went into this etc. folder here and I created a shortcut, and I think, I don't know, you do that somehow. I think we hold down Alt, maybe, create link. So, you know, we create a link to this, and now I just put that link in my Apache configuration folder here. So this makes it a little bit easier to work with because, as I said, this is a trick that I use quite a bit, so I'm adding new hosts a lot, actually. But in this case, again, we want YT to work. So we've got two files now. We've got this host file, and then we have our vhosts. So to make this work, I'm going to say 127.0.0.1. I'm going to hit a tab, and I'm just going to type in YT. I'm going to save that. And then in this file right here, I'm going to actually go off screen here, so you can't see this, but I'm going to paste in essentially this text. Go ahead and pause this video and copy this verbatim. And hopefully you've unpaused now and you come back. Essentially what we're doing here is we're telling Apache that if a request for this server name YT comes in, that Apache is going to handle that for us. In other words, when I type in YT in my web server, or my web browser address bar here, I want the Windows Apache installation to handle that for us. And then this is really important as well. So where do we actually go? We go to C users mat documents htdocs YT. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to open one, sorry for all the windows here, I'm going to open up one more window here. I'm going to paste that in. And this folder doesn't exist yet, so I'm just going to go to htdocs. You can see here that this is my web server folder. I suggest you do the same thing. Go to users, your username, my documents, and then create a folder called htdocs. And then in that htdocs folder, go ahead and create another new folder. Oops. In this case, called YT. And you can see there's kind of like this little triangle of connections that we've created here. So I have a folder called YT, and that's reflected right here, htdocs YT. Again, on Mac, this will be users. It'll be the path to your documents folder. But in this case, this is a real folder location that exists. The server name YT is what this host file does right here. In other words, Windows says whenever we try to access YT, I want to handle that. and then Apache is going to pick that request up, and it's going to serve that request to the C folder right here. So really all we have to do then is I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to take this host file, I'm going to copy it in and essentially overwrite the current etc. folder. And then for Apache, because we have a new entry here, I'm going to make sure that's saved. I'm actually going to close that, and then I'm going to restart Apache. And by the way, this is the other thing that Zend Server will do for us, is it'll give us this little Apache monitor right here, and it'll give us a quick way to restart our web server. So restart only takes a second, and hopefully if we've done everything right, now instead of going to some site that doesn't exist, if I hit return, I'm going to get a forbidden page. And this is a good thing. It's a naughty little error there, but it basically means that this is now a website that exists on our local server. So in order to get something a little bit more interesting than forbidden, let's actually close this and open up our htdocs folder here. Let's go into YT. Let's create a new file, and we'll call it index.php. Ooh, and there's one other thing that we got to cover here too. Let's quick create this index.php file. Oops, Dreamweaver's open. We're actually going to talk about software in the next video. And I don't want to push one particular software over the other. I use Dreamweaver and Zend Studio and a couple others. We can just as easily edit these in Notepad or whatever your preferred text editor is. And so I'm just going to create a simple little PHP command here to display our server's information. On this index.php then, now when we run this, and hit F5, we've displayed this. So this is a nice little test too. This lets us know that PHP is up and running on our machine. We essentially knew that when we had our Zend Server management tool come up, but this kind of proves that our virtual host is working as well. There's one other thing that I don't want to skimp out on here, which is that by default we actually need to make one other change. And apologies for not covering this in line with everything else. But if we go back to that folder, that Zend Apache 2 configuration, there's a file called httpd.conf. We want to open that guy up, and if we scroll almost down towards the bottom, there's going to be a line that we need to make sure we uncomment. So just do a text search for virtual hosts, and then there's going to be this line right here that by default is commented out, which means it's got a pound sign in front of it. Just take that pound sign away. And that says, when we're processing our server, include the http vhost.conf file, which is just this guy right here, right? So we edited this file. We need to make sure we tell Apache to actually do that. And you'll notice that there's other entries for the other different configuration or modules that we have in here as well. So configuration, http.conf, and then we'll have our virtual host. So hopefully that covers that. Again, in the next video, we're going to start talking about the tools that we use. We're going to be, again, as simple as we possibly can, just using the basic web tools in terms of text editors, very simple. And now we have a virtual host set up. So again, you don't have to have a virtual host, but I think this is much, much easier because, hey, here's one website that we're working on. In my file structure here, this keeps everything together. So I go to my htdocs, here's my YT folder, here's one website. If I want to create a second website, I can easily do that as well then. It keeps everything separate for us. So that is the end of our first video. Hopefully this has been a help, and like I say, we're gonna truck on. We're actually gonna start talking about creating PHP code in the next video.